Good evening, and thank you for tuning in once again to this Thursday's edition, May 20th, 2021, of What Do You Think? My name is Bill Morse, and this is a call-in program. Participation is important. I bring up subjects, or you bring up subjects, and we share reactions to those themes or to those topics. I wanted to just make a couple of references or recommendations to three YouTube channels that I would recommend checking out when you get the chance or have the inclination. One is YouTube channel from Thomas Sowell, Sowell, Thomas Sowell, and Thomas Sowell is a social commentator. He's a finance person. He's in his 90s. He was old enough to debate Joe Biden during Joe Biden's first term in Senate as the new senator from Delaware. So we're talking late 70s. He's been around a while. And his take, I find his take on social scenes and economic issues and also foreign policy to be more balanced than what we're normally exposed to, either mainstream media or special interest groups that express their views on YouTube and other media. So Thomas Sowell is my first recommendation or suggestion. Another is Barricade Garage, who is an auto mechanic who used to do YouTube self-help videos. His specialty is Jeeps, and he would explain how he replaces ball joints or how he does anything to do with Jeep automobiles, Jeep vehicles. And he started doing satire or comedy in which he plays the same character in a multi-character skit. He's done such people as Donald Trump, Dr. Fauci. Who else has he done effectively? Jordan Peterson from Canada, and a number of other people. And also Dr. Burke, who was very often on the screen during the first several months of the COVID situation last year. So, and he also does a pretty good impersonation of Bill Gates. So I would recommend, he's doing live streams in which he just talks at random about different things. His perspective is unique because he came from the foster program, I believe in Georgia, went from foster family to foster family. He wound up joining a gang. He wound up going to prison, both state prison and federal prison. He spent 6 months in solitary, during which time he read the Bible front to back 5 times. I'm not going to say that was his moment of epiphany, but he started looking at things differently. And so his perspective is unique, and it's not often heard. So I would recommend Barricade Garage. That's the name of the channel. Again, he's a car mechanic in Virginia. I don't know what his real name is. He hasn't divulged that. Last recommendation on more of a spiritual or religious note is Father Mark Goring. Father Mark Goring is a Catholic priest that has podcasts, or he has postings on YouTube. He's outside of Toronto, and he also has a unique perspective that is not in line always with the administrative doctrine that you might get from a diocesan office. So, refreshingly independent voice that's a little bit more hands-on with the issues that are facing the church, believers, and especially what's been happening in the last year and how that has affected church attendance and people's belief systems. So, Father Mark Goring, Goring, Barricade Garage, and Thomas Sowell, 3 recommendations. Now, I was in contact last night, again, contact via email with David Carl, who's the communications person for our Senator Patrick Leahy. And I said, I've scheduled the senator's feedback or responses to viewers' questions. There are 3 or 4 of them for next week. This has been an ongoing process. The senator obviously has been busy. His wife, Marcelle, is going through cancer treatment, so our prayers are with her. So he's got a lot on his plate. Plus I think he's pushing 88. He's been a senator since the mid-70s. I believe he wrote in as a Democrat after people were turned off from the Republican Party following Richard Nixon's resignation. But that's just my opinion. That's not necessarily fact. But so hopefully we'll get should be getting some reportable feedback from his office. And I would hope that you tune in again next Thursday, this same time at 5:45 for the program, and we'll be discussing the senator's feedback. He did give me some answers. I told David one of the questions that comes up is, why was there a price increase in gas in early February? Did that have anything to do with the change in administration? Well, it's a normal question. Timing isn't always everything. Timing sometimes can be pure coincidence. And he brought to my mind the fact that Texas had a very severe ice and snowstorm, if you remember. Ice and snow practically shut down the state. Many people went without power. He said that had a very damaging effect on the refineries, and because the refineries were not able to maintain the same oil-producing output, there was less gasoline to be refined. Also, he said that with the lifting of COVID regulations or mandates, restrictions, that more people were traveling, there was a greater demand on gasoline. So I don't know what you think the reasons are, but I just wanted to throw that out to you. It seems plausible that this would be a genuine reason why the prices, at least here in the Bellows Falls area, have gone from $2 a gallon to roughly $3 a gallon, and that they've stayed at that level, fluctuating maybe 6 or 7 cents per week. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, and I'm hoping to get more feedback from the senator's office next week. Legal issue that came up that I thought I would want to pass along to you. A Target employee, I don't know which Target this was here in the United States, decided that she was not going to be wearing her face mask that her employer was mandating anymore. So there's a group called America's Frontline Doctors. I haven't had a chance to Google them yet, but I will. America's Frontline Doctors, and they have a legal branch. And perhaps some of you have heard of this lawyer, but his name is Tom Rentz. He's an attorney, and he works on labor issues. And in this case, the labor issue was the employee did not want to wear a mask because they didn't see the benefit or understand the benefit behind the company mandate. Notice this is a company, Target, and this is not a state or a municipality. So the Target manager told the woman that she didn't need to come back to work, that she was effectively fired. She contacted this group, America's Frontline Doctors, I'm assuming through an internet search. And maybe she was bluffing, maybe she actually did engage them to the point that, look, I've lost my job because of this mask issue. She brought that up to the store manager's attention. The store manager said, let me check with our corporate law office, and lo and behold, she was reinstated. She got her job back, I think, a day or two later. And the company said, you do not need to wear a mask. Now, I don't know if that's just for her or if that's store-wide for all the employees, or, and I think this would set a precedent, it would have to be for every store within the Target network. This challenge to the mask mandate while they're at work. So just passing that along. I mention this because it kind of fits in with the video that we're going to be seeing. It's a 4-minute video that I came across by accident. I follow what's going on in Germany because I actually have a house that I've worked on, a rehab. I haven't been there in a year and a half, almost 2 years come November because of the COVID restrictions. Right now, Americans and anybody outside the European Union are not allowed to fly into Germany because of the lockdown. We have been going through, with the nicer weather, a relaxation of the mandates and the restrictions. They have not. And so they, as a protest movement in Berlin and in other cities in Germany, they've started what is called a gemeinsames Frühstück, or a communal breakfast, in which neighbors or people in the town or neighborhood get together outside a cafe, and they sip and drink coffee. They're together in a normal terrace seating arrangement. They're not wearing masks, and they're not necessarily social distance, and they're not necessarily with household family members. Well, last Mother's Day, which was the 9th of May, Muttertag, and they also celebrate it the same day we do, the police were summoned, and the police came, started talking with the people, and started issuing tickets. I believe the fine for breaking the mandates is over 1,000 euros, which is about $1,200 or $1,300. It's very hefty. It's a no-nonsense approach. And you'll see one elderly gentleman with a cane is actually taken, I would say against his will, into a police car and is handcuffed. I think it's kind of, because this is Germany and not somewhere else, people were restrained, but they were upset. And so if we could roll that video. This takes place, by the way, in Boppard, which is spelled B as in Bravo, O, P as in Peter, P as in Peter, A-R-D. Boppard, which is in west central Germany, not far from Frankfurt am Main. And again, I've muted this because the narration doesn't add anything to the explanation. And I'd rather just watch this without any sound effect and just the visual. So if we could roll that now. Klappstuhl is a folding chair. Which you brought your own chair. So this is kind of impromptu. And again, you see a policeman there, a Polizei. This is the breakfast for Mother's Day. And so my impression is that the police were called by somebody in the municipality, perhaps the Bürgermeister or perhaps some concerned citizens who didn't appreciate that the restrictions were being flaunted. You see none of the people seated have masks on. They're not maintaining the 6 foot or 2 meter distance that's required. The police, of course, are wearing masks. This is something you don't hear about in the news. Germany, I would say, is about 95% compliant with Angela Merkel's restrictions. She is currently the chancellor. She is not coming up for re-election. There's going to be a new chancellor, but the political parties are pretty much supporting these restrictions. So if you look at the gentleman in the gray hair with the white hair with his back to us, he's the person that's going to be handcuffed, arrested. I have no idea why. The narration doesn't explain what precisely is going on. It's pretty much just rhetoric, and there's no need to listen to rhetoric. But I thought the imagery was enough, taking out the ticket pad, writing tickets, because again, this is a finable offense. And the gentleman with the cane is being taken, and he's resisting as much as he can, I suppose. Nothing else is open. The town is closed down because of restrictions, as is the rest of Germany. And again, these communal breakfasts are taking place in different cities across the country. I'm not going to say they're widespread, but they're here and there. So, anyway, I'm showing this because I'm curious what your reaction is. Again, these officers are enforcing the law. They are doing their job. Their boss, the municipality, is paying their salaries. And so, in the law's eyes, these people are breaking the restrictions and are posing a public health threat. Right. And I think we end the video here with this gentleman being eventually taken away. I don't know for a fact, but I'm sure he was processed and then released for a court date. Okay, so that is the closing, and we are back in the studio. Thank you for playing the video. We have two callers on the line. We have both of you. Do you mind if I use your first names? Okay. All right. Kurt, are you there? Let's see. I need to hit. Kurt, could you... Let's see. Hold on. Ask to unmute. Kurt, you need to unmute. And Fred, can you give me some talk?
Sure, Bill.
Okay, good. Why don't we start with you, Fred, and then we'll go to Kurt.
You walked us through the video very nicely on that one.
And, thank you. What's your reaction? Because a lot of this, I can understand both sides of the argument, and I just thought it would be interesting for people to see what's happening in another country that's very similar to ours as far as economy, as far as standard of living. Germany has been harder hit than the U.S. as far as the number of deaths from what I can see in the statistics. So it's not the same scenario as we have faced here in this country. There are more people dying over there than over here from the virus. So what are your reactions to what we've just seen?
Sure. So, and it's complicated. When you step back, you probably had a bunch of people that had just been very hungry to go back to the way we used to not that long ago. And there's probably a high level of frustration and just a high level of craving for human interaction. And I get that. At the same time, when you talk about public health policy, when you still have something defined as a crisis with an end goal of reducing contact, if you will, so that the virus can't jump to another person and eventually dies either in the body of a vaccinated person or someone who has the antibodies or just doesn't...
The immune system.
Jump to another person. And so you have these people that are non-compliant. And I would just hope that from the sounds of that incident that the police following the incident, and the government is compassionate and understanding, but people, have been challenged with rules, and, they chose not to comply, and there's consequences.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right, so you can see both sides of the story, that we've been going on a year, and that restrictions over there have been far more severe than they have been depending on your state. Vermont has been not quite as severe as, let's say, New York or Pennsylvania, to take an example. But yeah, that's interesting. I think what is fueling the disconnect, and Kurt, if you could unmute, I'm getting a prompt here asking you to unmute, Kurt. Fred, just hold on 1 second, because it shows that you are muted. Ask to unmute. So again, #6 is what you told me worked for you, because I've got 388, your 388 number here, and I don't hear you. So anyway, so those are valid points. But what I was saying, I think what is fueling this resistance is the disconnect between the political parties, and all except the alternative party are pretty much backing the lockdown, the mask, the distance requirements, the fact that if you're going outside, you need to have a reason to be outside. What's that? *6. Kurt, *6 to unmute your device. *6, thank you. *6. There you are, beautiful. I thought it was palm 6. Yes. Very good. Kurt, meet Fred. Fred, meet Kurt.
Hello, Fred.
Hello, Kurt.
Very good. So, Kurt, Fred and I have been discussing his response, also my response to the video we just watched. Were you able to see it?
Oh, yes, I've been watching all of it. I agree with Fred 100%. Basically, if a country's trying to enact, even if it's a temporary law, and the police don't follow through when they blatantly see that it's not being carried out by the public, they're really compelled to react. And as sad as it might see a 70-year-old man or whatever being hauled away in a car, I mean, he's trying to make a statement or whatever, but again, his government made the mandate, for the general public protection. It's not to do that, and I mean he's flying right against the mandate. And I mean, really, the police have to do what they did to try to enact it, and hopefully other people will follow their lead. I had an interesting situation in my factory where we lifted the mask ban because of the CDC guidelines, the recent ones, and I was quite surprised. I went and announced it to the factory. I told everybody that if you've been vaccinated more than 2 weeks ago and had your second vaccination, you're free to remove your masks. I was shocked that everybody's still wearing masks, and in deference and respect to them, I'm still wearing my mask, even as today as well. So it's interesting how some people take the opposite approach.
Right. And my question off the top of my head is, you wear the mask until when?
Well, that's a damn good question. I mean, basically, no one, I don't think, really knows. Our state right now fell below 1% for today's COVID, tests, and that's been that first since I think about 8 months ago to be at that level. And I think we feel pretty confident. There's still other states around the country that have not. And I mean, as you look at states like Texas, where they've completely rescinded virtually everything, I still think that may be premature until really we see the numbers of victims in hospitals and everything start to disappear. No one knows what is going on in India now and why they're in such bad shape.
Yes.
And certainly with international travel, there's no way to, predict that won't reoccur here in the country. And we know with the older virus a year ago how quickly it proliferated. I mean, if something like that's going on in India hits us, I mean, I really would like to see solidly that it goes away. I'd like to think a year from now that the masks will go away by then. But I mean, if there's no question the masks gave a modicum of safety, and I think we should still continue with it. I can't speak for others, but how many people that have been wearing masks and have been out in public have had a cold this year in the last year? There's no question it has some efficacy, and I think to just abandon it, quickly just because we long to be back the way things were, it still may be premature because other parts of the world are still suffering from this.
Before I go to Fred's comment, Kurt, you just said that people were wearing masks and they still got colds. Was that right, or did I mishear you?
No. How many people out there that have been wearing masks have had a cold in the last year? I typically have one or two bouts of it in a year. I've had nothing. Most people I've talked to, they said, wow, I never thought about that, but I never got a cold last year.
Yeah, well,
so I think, preventing water droplets and making, being sprayed around and keeping hands clean with sanitizer and so forth is certainly a good practice. And, not that I want to, continue with it forever, but I still think it has value at this point because a good portion of the world is still having this virus.
Right, and then one other tag-along point before I switch over to Fred to see what he has to add. I've noticed that no one's gotten what we used to call the flu, and that puts a question in my mind because normally people get the flu or they get a bad cold and they may spend a day or two in bed. Did that disappear, or are we diagnosing through the tests people who get a cold as having COVID? Because it strikes me as very strange that no one has gotten the flu, but everybody who has gotten sick has been tested positive for COVID. I just would like to know where is the line being drawn between COVID, the virus, and what we've called the seasonal flu, when people start getting sick, especially with the change in temperature extremes. This has happened to you. I'm sure it's happened to me. It starts with a sore throat, etc. Initially, I thought I was just I had a flu, but it turned out to be it was tested as COVID. So my question, and I don't expect an answer from either of you gentlemen, is where is the line drawn between having a cold, having a fever, having the seasonal flu, which comes every year, and then this virus? So, Fred, I'm going to...
It would be nice if one of your callers with medical backgrounds would jump in here and actually see how you delineate a standard flu from COVID. That's a good question.
Yeah, I have to ask Dr. Vinny Gumgatz, or whatever his name was. Wasn't that Johnny Carson's...
Okay.
No, that wasn't. That
One
was...
thing I'll point out is...
Nope, that was Rodney Dangerfield's doctor. Go ahead.
I've heard that.
Vinny Gumgatz.
One thing I'd point out is that annually there's 50,000 flu deaths that occur.
Yes.
And you don't even hear about the standard flu and how many people have died from that.
Because
but
they're
I still
all
would think that having the masks have inhibited that.
I'm thinking that they've been labeled COVID because I think the line is very thin between the two, Kurt. And I think it's more convenient just to go with the label of COVID, and then you stay at home because there's really no other treatment other than zinc, I suppose, and Advil to, the zinc to help strengthen your immune system and the Advil to deal with the aches and pains. There is no remedy, or at least there's no remedy made available to the public for COVID, and it's just bedtime and not occasionally, but often, if it's a serious case, people have to have aid with their respiration. So, but anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Fred, did you want to throw something else in?
Just building off what Kurt started here. And Kurt, I think we met once through Bill in a restaurant or bar in Norwich. At least I'm thinking we did.
There was a bar, I'm sure. Oh, wait.
I got a flu shot this year. I normally don't get flu shots. But, with all this COVID stuff and, Kurt, until you said something, I started thinking I haven't been sick this year. And I usually get a cold.
Remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, I usually get at least one cold, and every few years I get the flu, and but I didn't get any of that. Though things have been politicized and there's rascals on both ends, I think generally when people die, they get tested if they have COVID, and then if they have COVID, maybe they call it a COVID death, even though it could have been a heart attack. But I think that like with anything, the data collection is important. Bill, one thing I'd like to know is just in the normal course of a year, or let's say this period of COVID, how many people have died, and normally how many people would have died in that same period of time? And see what the delta is, and maybe start a discussion around that.
I can help you with vague figures from Vermont because I asked that same question. I think it was last August. I did some Google research, and I did some DuckDuckGo research. I don't want to plug Google. They track you. DuckDuckGo, what's that?
You just did.
Yeah, I know, but it's a warning. Stay away from Google if you can. Go to DuckDuckGo. They will not track you. Anyway, Vermont, year before last, had something like 70 deaths from the flu. All right. 4 or 5 months into COVID, March to August, Vermont had a very similar number, 59 deaths due to COVID. Now that number is over 100, well over 100. But we're also into the 5th month of another year. I would say that there were more COVID deaths because of the virus than there were flu deaths the previous year. I'm going to say maybe as many as twice as many, but we're talking a lower number for a rural, generally rural state. So 65 deaths compared to similar number after 5 months of COVID. Let's extrapolate and say maybe a little over 100 by the end of the year. So you've got maybe 100, 110 COVID deaths compared to regular flu deaths because the person had other issues, and that's what brought them down. So, but Vermont is a case unto itself. The restrictions were brought in early, and people generally went along with them. I think closing schools was premature, and I think there should have been more latitude in canceling community meetings or church or worship services. They could have been outside. there could have been some guidelines for alternative settings instead of saying no, no, no. But that's already, hopefully we've learned from that experience, again, before we close schools down again. But I just got a call, hold on. Just a second, please. Hello? Yeah, hi, you sound excited. Is everything okay? You were out in the garden and what happened? All right, quickly though, because how come you're not watching the program? Oh, all right. Where did he go? You don't know. Did you mention Liam out loud in front of him, in front of Oliver? You did. Well, that's what happened. You mentioned Liam. All right. Yeah, you can call. I know I've got the truck. I'll do something about it when I get back. Are we set for beer? If not, I'll stop at the store. No, all right. Calm down. Take it easy, and don't worry. We'll find him. Yeah. Bye-bye. That was Carla on Oliver. Whenever myself or Carla mentions Liam is Oliver's best friend in Philadelphia. Liam lives in the house of Jean, who is Carla's best friend in Philadelphia. Last time this happened, Oliver went on a runner. He misses Liam so much that he actually thinks that he can walk to Liam's house. So the last time, one time, this has happened a couple of times. The last time he did this, he took off. He got onto the on-ramp for exit 6, southbound on 91, and he made it all the way to Northampton. Somebody, according to the story, somebody saw his tags and saw Philadelphia and his name, Oliver. And so they brought Oliver as far as Northampton and then left him at the side of the interstate because they had reached their destination. State police are nearby. They drove by and they saw Oliver and they picked him up. Long story short, they checked to see if he was wanted or sought after. They checked him to see if he had any tattoos. And finally, they called Philadelphia, and Philadelphia called us. And I couldn't get him for a day. Oliver evidently didn't eat. He was on a hunger strike overnight. He wouldn't eat or drink. So when we finally got him home, 2 days later, he was very hungry. But this has happened before. I hope he doesn't get as far as 91 this time. But we'll see. Like I said, this has happened before. We can't mention Liam because he goes berserk and he starts heading for the woods. He goes up the hill by the house and he heads towards 91, which is just west of the house. If you listen carefully, you can hear the semi-trucks going by. So anyway, that's what that's about. Guys, did you want to end? I have to end the show quickly. Is there anything else you wanted to add to the subject of the video or anything else in particular? Kurt?
No, one thing I will say, I will check my sales manager that just retired. His wife also retired as well after 20 years of being the head ER doctor. And I'll ask to see how they differentiate between COVID and standard flu. That's a good question, and I will look into that. Thanks.
Okay. Fred?
No, just glad to be on the show tonight, Bill, and hope to see you again on the show.
Okay, hold on just a second. Yeah, hi, Carla. What's up? Oh, that's good news. All right, cool. Talk with you very soon. A neighbor 6 houses down returned with Oliver. So she had to carry him. He didn't want to come back. So anyway, we end on a positive note. And I want to thank you guys for calling. Next week, as I was mentioning earlier in the program, should get some feedback from Senator Leahy. And there'll be other things to talk about. So again, thank you for participating. And I will speak with you two gentlemen later.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Not at all. Cheers.